Hello? Okay, I think we're almost all here. There may be a few more coming in. Good evening. Welcome to the Art Institute of Chicago. I'm Larry Antonatis, president of the Society for Contemporary Art. Established in 1940 as a not-for-profit organization, the Society for Contemporary Art supports the Art Institute of Chicago by engaging the community in a dialogue about the art of our time and by acquiring works that enrich the museum's collection. The SCA is about community, the SCA is about dialogue, the SCA is about the art of our time, and most importantly, the SCA is about the Art Institute of Chicago. Thank you for being here with us tonight as we kick off 2025 with Judith Geichman as our first artist speaker. Before we begin tonight's program, I want to highlight a few upcoming SCA events. I'll begin with member programs. On Monday, January 27th, our sponsor, patron, and benefactor members are invited to view pop art collection highlights with Gianpaolo Banconi. The tour will be followed by a reception at the Chicago Firehouse. On Wednesday, February 17, patron and benefactor members will enjoy a private tour of the contemporary prints in the Prints and Drawing Department's Study Center. The tour will be led by Mark Pascal, the Janet and Craig Dussois curator. In addition, please mark your calendars for 3 public programs with 3 speakers here in Fullerton Hall. Jason Moran, jazz pianist, composer, and performance artist, will speak on Friday, April 18. Adriano Pedroso, artistic director of the Musée d'Art Sao Paulo, and also the curator of the 2024 Venice Biennale, will speak on Monday, April 28. And Veronica Ryan, a Turner Prize-winning British visual artist who works primarily in sculpture and assemblage, will speak on Wednesday, May 21. The Society for Contemporary Art is a membership-supported organization open to everyone with a range of membership support levels, including reduced fee artist and junior membership, our standard friend membership, and our important sponsor, patron, and benefactor memberships. All are available on our website, and we sincerely hope you will join us in becoming members of the SCA. Now, I would like to invite Jessica Diamond, the SCA Programming Committee Chair, to introduce our speaker, Judith Geichman.
Thank you, Larry, and welcome to all of you for joining us this evening for the first SCA Artist Lectures of the spring season. It doesn't feel like spring, but it's here nonetheless. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our guest speaker this evening, Judith Geichman, an artist whose work challenges and redefines the boundaries of abstraction through her masterful exploration of color, gesture, and form. Judith is known for her dynamic and evocative paintings, which are marked by their bold interplay between spontaneity and control. A graduate of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Judith is a beloved member of the Chicago artist community, where she has made a lasting impact as both artist and educator. Over the course of her career, Judith's work has been exhibited widely, including solo and group shows at the MCA, the University Club, and Regards, her local gallery here in Chicago. Judith is the recipient of many awards and grants, including the Visual Artist Fellowship Grant from the NEA. Her work is held at the Art Institute here in Chicago, the University of Chicago Booth School, among many others. And tonight we have the privilege of hearing directly from Judith as she shares her insights into her creative journey. Please join me in giving a warm SCA welcome to Judith Geichman.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica, for that introduction, and thank you to the Society of Contemporary Art for this invitation to talk tonight. And thank you all for being here on this cold winter night in Chicago. So I see so many people I know and friends, and it's just very heartwarming, so thank you. I thought I'd begin the lecture with the studio. My studio, I have a studio in Garfield Park. And it's a beautiful spot. I'm on the 4th floor. I look out to the east, to the city, and to the west, to the south, to the neighborhood. And it's a very special place. And for all of you who are here that have studios or a place of your own that you can do your work, you know how valuable and how precious that space is. For me, it's a place to put aside some of the roles I have and be with my work. It is a place where I take risks. I can be experimental. I can do whatever I want. And I try very hard to try to make something fresh and new that feels great and be as brave as I can be. This is another view, one wall of the studio where you're looking at a collection of things that I have collected for years. Little mementos, detritus, picked up off the street, tins of whatever that look like jewels to me, memories, moments of remembrance that are on that wall. And so when I come into the studio, it's a very welcoming wall to look at. It just reminds me of a support, actually, of the things that I'm attracted to and remember. So that is one wall. And then this is another area where I'm working, a kind of place where there's plastic sheeting on the floor and tarpaulins and paint collected. You see there's some stencils that I've been working with that I have collected there. And then I have this great big table, that's crazy table with all these spray paints and materials and tools and whatever, and mixed paint on the, in buckets on the floor. So, the first shot of the studio looked very serene and beautiful. And I think as you get closer and closer to some of the things that I'm working with, it looks kind of crazy and wild and open, and it leaving the tracks of my making my work. The studio has been a subject of emphasis or focus on a couple of exhibitions I've had. This one is a very special one. This is at NFA Space with my partner, Frank Piatek. We're living in a loft at this time on Milwaukee Avenue, right in back of the Blue Line. And we were invited by Amavong Pangya and Ian Murhan. They were SEIC students who had this space in Uptown. They divided the space, one side for Frank, one side for me, and built those platforms. And we decided to share what our workspace was like. This was a series of shows about work, and it was our turn to do it. So Frank decided to bring his drawings, his paintings, his collection of books and furniture, and I, on the other side, decided to show my workspace. I had been working in this Milwaukee studio for a number of years, so the tarpaulins on the floor were collecting with a lot of paint. I cut some of that away from my studio and brought it into that space and laid it out like a carpet. You can see here, there's a shot here of those round discs that you're looking at. I found those at a thrift store on Milwaukee Avenue. They're sleds. And at that time, I was using them to pour paint into. So the acrylic paint is being poured into those discs, and I let them dry and then pull them out, and then sometimes I would collage them and applique them onto canvases. There is this cornucopia of pieces of shards of paint of every color that I pulled out of buckets that I think are beautiful. There's sort of that detritus of the studio practice, this collection of debris that I put as a piece of kind of sculpture. The next show this is a picture from the Fassbender Gallery on Superior. Ingrid Fassbender invited, I had the project space at this time. This is 2001. And I brought the tarpaulins from the studio, one on the floor and one on the wall. And then the painting to your right is a painting called Dutch Suite. I named it after my father. And it's a big painting. It's about 90 by 75, and it's stretched on a canvas. And this time, I'm trying to have a dialogue between the tarpaulin. The tarpaulins, I make my work on the floor. Many of the paintings are on the floor. And I'm pouring, I'm scraping, I'm doing whatever I'm doing to make a painting. And all that overflow of paint is falling on those tarpaulins. It's random. It's not at all like the painting or the other painting on the other side that's very controlled. Not so much controlled. I'm pouring and doing, but I'm constructing. I'm building a painting. I'm editing. I'm taking away. I'm adding on, and I'm making it through time. So they're made in the language of both paintings. They share a language, but made in a very different way. So I think what I am doing at this time is comparing and looking. Maybe those tarpaulins could be read as a painting and not just the waste, to fill the debris of the process. So that was kind of enlightening. So the studio is sort of the studio practice, and the debris and the activity is sort of getting closer to the works that I'm making. This is a installation shot of, I'll grab a water. Michelle Grabner and Annika Marie curated a show called Picturing the Studio at the School of the Art Institute's Sullivan Galleries. That was in 2010. And again, Frank and I were invited into the show, and we divided it up, and we decided to do an update of what we did in the NFA space. Frank showed his work of the current time, I showed mine. And at the time, Frank, I think, was making these tags, and you can see a big drawing of his back there. I was working with this two-part material called foam, a two-part material that it made foam. And on the back wall, you can see there's a painting where I'm applying this foam layers by layers. And then the debris from what I did to make that painting, I saved all the shards, and it's gathering, and I'm making a pile of it. And again, the tarpaulins from my studio floor are brought back into the show. And then I tried a Chris O'Feely move, and instead of elephant dung, I put pieces of foam on the floor and then rested the one painting and leaned it against the wall. And so that was a lot of fun. So the next thing I want to talk about is tools. I collect tools, along with a lot of other things, from those moments on the picture on the walls and whatever. And these tools, I was having a show at Regards in 2015, and one summer night, I decided I want a family portrait of my tools. So I had a photographer come out, and I arranged them all in my studio, from the tiniest brush to the biggest rake. And I think, I look back and I think, how did I get to this interest? And it was Ray Yoshida. Ray Yoshida was a teacher of mine, and I took his class, an undergrad painting class. I was sort of transitioning into grad school, and Ray brought up this idea of mark making. I'd never heard, what's mark making? And I really took to it because in his class, I was making a lot of marks on big photo backdrop paper. But so I think that was the idea of it. And I was really looking up, and at this time, I'm looking up and down the aisles of Home Depot. I'm going to paint stores. I'm looking for tools that would give me maybe a Gare Richter scrape, or a Jack Whitten comb of the paint, or I think of Ed Clark's whooshy brushes and brooms and whatever. And so I think that was the inspiration of how it was started, from a very small, like pencils and pens and mark makers, to something larger like these tools. So I take a lot of pictures. I take a lot of pictures that connect to my studio practice. And this was one of them. This is a shot from my studio window looking out at a parking lot in a community center across the street from the studio. And what's there is this exquisite drawing made by tracks of cars pulling in and out of the parking lot one, snowy day. And I thought, well, I wish I would have made that, but it was really quite beautiful. I love the scale of it and how it was done, and it fit. So this is another one. Next to this parking lot is this house that is about a 3-flat, I don't know, it has from my eye, a most exquisite wall. I love walls. I love old walls. And that wall is deteriorating. It's falling apart. It kind of has an echo of maybe there was a staircase there. I look in the wall and I see images. I see a great ship, or I see a mountain, or whatever. And it makes me think of Leonardo's quote that he made and talked about painting, about, you could see a mud-spattered wall, or splatters, and they could remind you of a landscape, or you see portraiture, or you see something. And when that happens in my work, I'm excited. I'm happy about that. I'm not going to cover the head up or whatever it is. I think those moments spark my imagination, make me think of other things, make me think of paintings that I think about all the time from all my years of looking. And so I kind of honor that kind of process, and I'm happy if it happens to somebody that's looking at my work. These three pictures, the one closest to me is a picture that I took in Venice, Italy. I was walking around and I saw this old poster just falling apart on the wall and thought it was exquisite. The door is a banged up door from a medieval castle in Burgberg, Austria. I was just in Austria this past summer, and this castle, it was a castle with this door. I thought, wow, what a gorgeous door. And then the other far right is a metal plate, a worn metal plate that I saw on a wall in Rome, Italy. And that idea of this detritus, this falling away, this deterioration, to me can be quite beautiful. And I'm attracted to it. So that's that. And then this was in the dock, in my loading dock, in the building I'm working in the studio. I thought of Robert Rauschenberg right there. I'd seen that black plastic with the text on it, and then there's this old beat-up cart. And the contrast of those materials I thought was exquisite. And then the piece on the other side is just a shot of my studio floor in my studio. So here are some few images of some of the work that I've made with these different kinds of materials. The first one is I'm filling a thin, watery, liquid acrylic paint into a squeezed plastic bottle, and I'm drawing. I'm drawing on a canvas, just a plain cotton duck canvas. And then what I take is another plastic container holding this fiber called flock. It's a suede fiber, and I'm blowing that fiber into the wet paint, and it covers the wet paint like a coating of like what we saw maybe today with the snow right on the ground, a delicate kind of covering. And I seal it with an acrylic mist, and that's that. On the other side is a painting that's like 5 feet by 5 feet. And I'm putting an enamel, I'm breaking some rules here. I'm putting a black enamel ground down on this surface with palette knife. And then I wait till it dries really well. And I then take a big pot of this creamy off-white acrylic paint and slather it on the top of it. It's like that parking lot next to what I'm looking down on. And then I take all these different tools and I'm scraping back to the darkness on the bottom. And I do that and I cover it, and I'm covering and marking and covering and marking. So what's happening is the tools are making a mark, but they're becoming more hybrided. They're pieces of this and that start to make a painting. Here are 3 more of combing the paint, scraping it. I started out with like a Target little dustpan, and I cut teeth into it, and I started combing that way. And then it escalated. I started getting big pieces of rubber and a saw and cutting big shapes of whatever to be able to pull. And then I put them on like a Richter thing that Richter carries around and tried to do larger events. These happen to be just paintings that are on canvas, just 22 inches square. Here are 2 more. These are on Yupo paper. I like to work on this paper. This is about 80 inches by 60. It's on a roll, and it's mounted on Dibond, both of these paintings. They're drawings and paintings, and I think maybe I can think of how drawing and painting are really neck and neck for me. They're like a marriage, back and forth. And I'm working and drawing with paint. And in the one closest to me, it's made of spray paint. I didn't use much spray paint at this time, but I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. And I thought, I like that. I like that I don't know what I'm doing. I was just playing. And it ended up that I really loved this piece and ended up showing it in one of the shows I had at Regards. The other piece is made on UPO, a little more controlled. And this time, I'm preparing a show, it's called Diamonds. And I'm making these diamond shapes. I had diamond panels made, but I'm taking that spray paint and making these configurations, and it gets a little wonky and a little out of order. But thinking that the work I'm showing you is a lot about pattern, the repetition of pattern. And these two paintings are both 5 feet by 5 feet, and similar way, the black enamel ground down, big moving of this kind of icing the cake kind of idea of the white creamy color, and then taking these tools that I'm making more stripes with. So I'm sort of limiting the idea of not every kind of mark and every tool, but just these very specific tools. And they ended up being in a show, and that show that I was preparing for in 2015 at Regards. And this is a shot of the gallery with the two paintings. And this is, I'm hoping I said her name right, Melina Astakidis, who's a singer, has a beautiful voice, and she has a fake guitar, and she gave a performance one night while the show was up. And my paintings were on the backdrop of that show, that performance, and it was quite lovely. I think right now, being here in Regards, I want to say something about Natalie and Mike Shue. Natalie and Mike Shue have been the greatest dealers. They get my work. I am so grateful to have the opportunity to work with them. We've been working together. I've had 4 solo shows at Regards, and every one of them has been so special because of them. So I have my deepest thanks to both of them. This is Regards wall, but a different show. And this is what part of the diamond show. One of the pieces closest to me, I get the left and the right, is made on UPO paper and mounted on Dibond. The other is a stretch canvas. And so this idea of the motif of the diamond is being played with and splayed with, and like an instrument, pulled apart and put back together again. I'm using some of the process of editing by misting, like covering areas up and blocking space out, trying to create different kinds of layers of space and pattern. And then these two are very close together. One is I bought a tub of this crackle with acrylic paint, and I'm stirring it into it's a big container. This painting, I think, is maybe 45 by 33 and a half, and it's on a panel. And one side, this one is made with acrylic, with those stencils and the crackle, and I left it on the floor, and I come back, it's all cracked up, so the patterns are layered, the diamonds, the cracking, the physical approach of putting the paint down with this big knife. All of them are interacting with each other. The other painting is made with enamel paint, and there you can see I'm using a stencil and a spray paint. And the enamel is quite beautiful. It's like, it has a sheen, and there were moments where it just came out perfect. And then there's others that are glip. There's a kind of, a mark or a scrape or something there in the painting that is talking to that beautiful moment that's okay and not okay. And so the contrast of that is something that I'm interested in. And so I really like materials. That's one thing. And this kind of proves it. I'm taking you back to like 1977. I'm in graduate school from 76 to 78 at the School of the Art Institute, and I'm living now in a loft space on Halsted near Grand and Milwaukee, where those streets meet. And right around the corner, lucky me, is the biggest Salvation Army store, like the mothership of Salvation Army stores. And I go outside in the back of the building, and I see these kitchen chairs. They're just there, and I go, wow. And I took them into my studio, and I started playing around with them. and putting little flowers and things like that. And at the time, I was working with Ray Yoshida again, this time as a graduate advisor. And when you had a studio at that time, if you had a studio away from school, the advisors would come and do studio visits with you where you had your studio. And I'm expecting Ray Yoshida, he was amazing, and he's gonna do a studio visit. I got the chairs, I'm real excited about it. He comes in, he looks at the chairs, he looks at my little flowers on the chairs, and he said, "Judy, half a person is working here," like that. And I was like, oh my God. I tried to stay calm, I was devastated. He leaves the studio, and I cry. And then the next thing I know it, I'm around the corner at that Salvation Army purchasing old, dirty mattresses. And I dragged them one at a time around the corner, up 2 flights of steps into my studio, and I start ripping the hell out of them, ripping them open. I find this cotton batting. It's not polyester, it's cotton batting. And I start sculpting. And at the time, the medium that people were using was called Rollex. And I would buy it in gallon things. I think they sold it at the school at the time. And I would cover the cotton batting. There are rag rugs there. There are different parts of the mattress that I cut up and pulled together, and I made these chairs. And I look at these chairs, and they're scary. They're scary. And I go, oh my God, I've made monster anthropomorphic chairs. And I liked it. I liked that they were scary. I liked that they were a surprise. And I think Ray gave me that permission to just play, to do what I needed to do, to make what I had to do. And I think at that time also, I was questioning, what is beauty? What is my beauty? What do I want to do? What am I doing? And that whole word, the idea of abject, I don't think I had it there yet, but I think I look at it, and that frightening, scary, beautiful thing was something that I think is of interest to me right now. Here's another chair another chair that I made with this material. And I wanted to say at this time that I am growing up and becoming an artist and a painter during the women's movement, during the 70s and 80s. And Miriam Shapiro came, while I was in grad school, came to visit, and I had studio visits with her, and she was the one that, with Judy Chicago, did Women House in LA. I remember standing in line on Dearborn, a line to see Judy Chicago's dinner party that came through Chicago in the 70s. Lucy Lepard's book, From the Center, an anthology of all these women artists that I'd never heard of, like Eva Hess and Louise Bourgeois, and all these people, all these women starting to have shows and being presented in museums was something very new. And then I had my cohorts. I had the women that I went to school with who were dear to me, Laurie Fendrick, Olivia Petrides, Sarah Krepp, Nicole Ferenc. All these women, we met many times together at our homes and our studios and talked about our work, talked about our lives, and it was empowering and important. I'm going to show you now, just going through time from the 90s to the present time, some of the things I made with other materials beyond the cotton batting. Some of them were plaster and sand. I would go to lumber stores and look for stuff that I think I could stew, like a big stew it around and put it onto the Menerbes. Some of this is on a panel. Some of these are on canvas. Both of these are on canvas. So I'm trying different things out. I'm pushing, trying, and they're all not really big. Some of these are like 12 by 10 inches. And I've worked with that size practically my whole painting life, just small things that become big things, and just having the freedom to play and explore. Here's the foam, a couple of those foam pieces that were in that show at Picturing the Studio. And then these are more recent, one made of enamel paint. on linen, and the other on graphite powder and acrylic on linen. Maybe, I think, I'm trying to think if they were 20 by 16. So at some point, I stopped making work with the cotton batting. I had them out of crates, I had furniture parts, I did everything with the cotton batting, and at some point it was over. We broke up, cotton batting and I, that was it. And I started, what did I do? I started painting patterns, abstract patterns, and some of those tools of mark making were sort of being introduced. You're looking at a picture of an installation at Artemisia Gallery. It's 1982, and this is my very first exhibition. And it was a big deal. The gallery's named after Artemisia Gentileschi, a 17th century Italian painter, and that again was reinforcing all the connection to women and women's work. This picture, I'm going to grab a glass of water here. So at the time that I'm painting this for this show, I moved out of that loft on Halsted, and I'm now living in a storefront apartment in Wrigleyville, very close to the Graceland Cemetery. And I jogged at the time, and I would go into Graceland and run. I would just jog and run through the pathways of Graceland. And so the piece to the left, the piece that you're seeing, yes, to your left, was one of the paintings in that show that I showed you the installation. And I realized at the time that I'm running through this cemetery, I'm thinking about the space of a labyrinth. Like the labyrinth became a concept. This labyrinth, a map of transformation, a map of change. And I'm running through the cemetery, and I come back to that storefront, and I start to make these paintings. On the other side, I'm going to just say, on the other side, you're looking at an Alfred Jensen painting. And the MCA had a show of Alfred Jensen, I think about 78, 79, I'm not around there. And I was knocked out when I saw Alfred Jensen's paintings. His abstract paintings, thick, rutted paint, his systems, the calendars, the numbers, the letters, all of it was amazing to me. And so he became a really good teacher for me. And I took some of those ideas from Alfred Jensen. Well, going back to the painting, I'm not making the painting on the floor now. I'm making it on a wall. And what I did is I walked up to the painting and tried to measure my belly button to that painting to find its center. And then from that, I built and constructed that space. And it became like a labyrinth and a pathway and a map. And it was thick oil paint, not exactly like Alfred Jensen, but in the inspiration of. And so I did a series of those paintings. And a lot of the paintings have an architectural top, which relates to some of the mausoleums that I was looking at Graceland and running through Graceland. Graceland was peaceful. It's like going back to the 19th century. It was a comfort, and I felt it was a beautiful place to kind of transform and think about my work. I was faced with something at the time with the shows that I was having, that I was building, and I'll go back maybe that the patterns that I were making and the abstract paintings were very much about being in the front of the painting, about right in front. I wanted to go deeper into the painting. I had to break through that seal of pattern to go through and make a deeper space. And this picture is a picture of my work at the Spertus Museum. It was called the Spertus Museum of Judaica at the time. And this is a show I had in 1988. And that show gave me the opportunity to push my work. I'm going to show you, this is one painting called Traces of Metatron. It's a diptych. It's about 120 inches long, split in the middle, and about 88 inches high. And I'm drawing with that oil paint. I'm drawing and trying to deepen space. I'm looking at the Cubists. I'm looking at the Futurists, the Italian Futurists. I'm I'm just trying to open things up, and I put everything on that diagonal axis to like go in and go out, and it felt like an urban celestial spaceship to me. And Metatron was, I don't know if I said this, a Hebraic angel. So a lot of the work, I was looking into the Kabbalah at this time. I even took a class at the Spertus about the Kabbalah. The angels, the energy of angels, thinking about that was inspiring. And I did this one called Angel Dance. So now the work is even getting, I think, more, I'm trying to open it up, drawing, trying to create volumetric space, flat space, any kind of space, and open that up. So that's sort of, and I was just thinking of some of the mentors at that time were, Joan Mitchell, Lee Krasner, Helen Frankenthaler. Those three women gave me so much and helped me out a lot. So then the next show is at the State of Illinois Gallery in the Thompson Center. And here's another opportunity to push my work and see where I could take it. And the paintings are still in oil with wax, and they're large. Most of them were large scale. And I'm working on the floor, and I'm really pouring and pushing the paint around. I'll show you. These are two paintings from that show. And I'm working with a lot of solvents. So I'm not into the acrylic paint yet. And I'm doing a lot of that drawing that you saw at the Spertus, but this time the solvents are kind of dissolving those drawings. They're melting away, they're dissipating, they're opening the space to much more of an atmospheric kind of event. And the drawings are peeking through once in a while. I can see them, but it's more about the paint and the action of it and trying to get something to happen that feels kind of new and fresh. And then this one is in 1992 at the Struve Gallery. Bill Struve gave me a show. I was so thrilled. And these two paintings are dark, and they're very biomorphic, and they're made with stains, very thin layered stains over and over. And the large one I named after a dear friend of mine that passed away from breast cancer, Fanny, a woman I met early when I moved here to Chicago. And the other painting is named The Book of Samuel after my Uncle Sam, who was my father's older brother, a wonderful human being, a delight, an early mentor of mine. And so I did a whole series of paintings called The Book of Samuel. And then after that, this is 1996, 98. I'm having a show at the Cultural Center, and the color came back. There's lots of color, and this time I'm really using those sleds that I showed you, those discs, to manufacture paint skins that I am now going to apply and applique onto a series of paintings. A number of them were diptychs. This idea of a diptych where some of the parts would meet and not. Some of the moves where paint would look depthful and atmospheric, but the skins of paint were adding a kind of relief and a tactility and another kind of construction of the space. So that was that. I'm showing a detail, which is like, I think at the bottom right-hand corner, right center. Maybe you can see it, I don't know. So that was sort of the series of shows that really helped me grow. And then there was this show. I've been in a number of group shows, but this one was amazing. This is, it's called Still Wet, and it's at the Julius Caesar Gallery in Garfield Park area. And you're looking at the card that was there, and you're seeing, this is Dana DiGiulio, Aline Costas, Molly Hart-Zuckerman, Kaylee Wyatt, myself, and Uni Che. And Molly and Dana were the founding fathers or mothers of Julius Caesar. And Molly was going to have a show. And she wanted something more alternative, so she decided to show her work in a hallway right outside the gallery. And then she invited us to go in the gallery and paint it. And so what the premise was is that one person would go in the gallery and paint and do whatever they want. We had big ladders, we had everything there. We covered some things that looks like with paper to protect the brick and the floor. But I think we painted on the floor. Anyway, we would go in and paint and do our thing, and then call the next person and say, still wet. And they would come in and take over and do whatever they wanted in that space. So when you're all by yourself in there and doing anything, you could take away, add, subtract. And so that's what happened. I would go in there and look at like what I had done maybe the last time I was there was completely gone, was covered, was something new there. And that was very refreshing. So this is some of the images of the space with the door open and door closed. So I think about that experience and what a great thing to work with those women and do that. But the freedom that we had, the risks that we took, making you think, what is a painting? What can a painting be? A painting installation. I didn't hear about that too much at that time. But we really had, I think that show really pushed me to grow in a different way and become more conscious of whatever. So now, the conscious of, okay, I'll finish my sentence. It made me appreciate the freedom that I have to make the work and to really let go. And nothing is precious. Nothing is precious. It's all can disappear in a second. And so that was a good teacher of having that experience with these women. But I now have a picture up of the same wall at Regards, and now it's a different show called Atmosphere. And I'm taking this paper called Hanji paper. What's Hanji paper? I found, when I moved into this Garfield Park studio, I found this big piece of paper. It's really big. And I see a stamp on it that says, made in Korea. And so what I did is I called a student, I sent an email with a picture of the stamp to a student that I had at SAIC who is now living in Seoul. And I said, TK, can you find this paper for me? You know, I found it. I love it. Can you find more of it? And he did. It was a miracle. He found the store, he found the paper. I had some shipped to me. And so I've had a couple shipments of this paper. I love this paper. But the paper can be folded. It's very sculptural. It's very tender and physical. And when it's soft and delicate when it's wet, and very strong, especially with paint on it, and acrylic, mostly acrylic paint now. I'm spray painting. I switched and I'm not working with oil. That show at the Cultural Center was when I really made the switch from acrylic to, from oil to acrylic. I don't know if I mentioned that. But back to this Hanji paper, I've tried to show a little bit of how I make the work on the floor. The smaller picture is that piece that's been folded and refolded, and then finally, this is the way it looked in the exhibition. And here's another piece where I'm folding the paper in many different ways, painting in between the folds and whatever. And then this is the piece over there to your right. And I'm noticing that some of the paintings I'm folding simply in the beginning, they have six linear lines in them. And I'm thinking, that's connecting to the I Ching. I do the I Ching online. I throw the coins virtually and come up with this bit of Chinese wisdom that I kind of honor with every day. And some of these paintings are folded in regards to that idea. This is another painting on the right and the left. This is the floor where I'm literally putting some things on the painting, stamping. I had some extra diamond-shaped panels that I had made for a show, and then I used them as tools, and so you can kind of see what's going on in the making of the painting. This is another one on enamel, a painting, just enamel paint, and another shot of the floor that I took. And then these two paintings were found in a way, and I'll tell you about those. The painting closest to me, I'm painting one of those little paintings I was telling you about, 12 by 10, and I'm spray painting on this plastic sheeting in my studio, and I look at what I'm spraying or working on, and I go, oh my God, that's a painting. it's not the painting I'm working on, it's that floor, that plastic sheeting. So I immediately cut it away, and eventually I mounted it on a panel, and then I took it to a welder, and he welded a beautiful steel frame around that painting. It's just that you can hardly see the frame when you look at the painting in the front. You can see it on the side. But that steel that he used was almost identical to the color of the painting in the inside. And I thought it was just a beautiful thing that happened. I was excited. The other piece, the black piece, that is on a raincoat material. I had found this raincoat material at a fabric store here, and I was having a show at the University Club, and I did some small paintings for that show. And I didn't use the raincoat side, I used the other side. And I'm going through, I have a box of these small paintings in my studio. I'm looking through, I take a look at that painting. I thought, I don't like this painting anymore. Now it's 2 years later, it's 2024. And I decide to restretch it. I take it off, restretch it. This time the raincoat material is facing out, and on it are these delicate, like wispy, ghosty marks that came through from the old painting. And I thought, oh my, that's a painting, not touching that. And these two pieces were in the most recent show I had at Regards in April, May, called The Floor, the Wall, the Space in Between. As I said, I love walls. I love looking at walls. I love old walls. And this wall was in Dürstein, Austria. I went to this little town that was close to Krems. I had a residency, I think it's AIR residency, that is connected to the School of the Art Institute. And I applied. I got to go this last summer in June. And so I made some little trips around the area, and this wall was a knockout. And then the piece next to that is, notice I line them up so they almost look like they're on the same plane. It's perched on the floor. This is 2 pieces of hanji that I'm wetting together, and then I'm folding it and refolding and painting in there and letting it dry and pulling it apart. The painting is having a wear and tear. And I'm then also trying to squinch it and puff it out like I'm draping for a fashion show or something. But the painting really did go through some wear and tear. So if you get closer to the painting, you see voids, you see rips. Some of them have been mended, some not. And so that contrast of this piece is about 9 feet something by 80. And I wanted it to feel like a wall, like a big wall. But when you get close to it, you see all the fragility and the wear and tear of making the work that I thought was so beautiful. And it felt so human, like a body, like a feeling. Back to the feelings, these are made with feelings that go with yes or no. It's not like the feeling of a feeling. It's a feeling of, does that look good? No? Or does it stay? And that process of feeling my way through the picture is helping me build it and make it. This was at the Dora Maar house. Dora Maar was a surrealist photographer, mostly known for her photography. And she lived, but she was a friend and a liaison of Picasso. Their relationship didn't work out so well, but Picasso gave her some pictures. And what she did with those pictures and work, she sold it and bought this huge house in the south of France, in Menerbes, France, not far from Marseille, a village, more of a village way up on a hill, exquisite. And so I had an opportunity to be in this place. And this is one of the areas I documented, so many walls and everything. The Brown Foundation took this house over, and Nancy Negley, her family is from the Brown family, redecorated this whole space. It is absolutely exquisite. Everything in it is like beautiful. And so, and the garden and everything, you feel like you're in enchantment. And so that's one wall I documented. The other comes from an industrial space on Cermak Road. I had gone to a show of a friend of mine, and looking out the window, and I noticed the window looks pretty good, so I took a picture of that. And then this is another piece, a diptych of Hanji together that felt very much like a wall, distressed and painted. There's probably mostly water-based paint on this, not too much spray, I don't think, but the surface of the making of the work starts to have a presence and personality that's kind of fun with this paper. This is a picture above a doorway in Rome. I thought this scene was absolutely exquisite. And then this is on the other side, a piece of Hanji paper, and I called it Scene. When I was in France, I went to Arles, and I went into a great big church, a Romanesque Catholic church that was absolutely exquisite. And this is one of the pictures of the wall with stains and sort of an echo of what was there before. The chandelier, the bricks, the walls, everything was magnificent to me. It was so beautiful. And then the other image is the exterior wall of the outside wall of the Dora Maar house that looked like the night sky. So beautiful. So I tried with my photographs and my work to try to look, the seasons have been very important. Working in the fall and the winter and going through the seasons. And this painting, I really wanted it to look like fall, being inspired by all the colors that I was looking at and seeing. I folded it. It's pretty tall. It's like about 9 feet by 60, and it's on Yupo paper. And these two pieces were, I have an area in my studio where I'm layering through storage, layers of paint, layers of tarpaulins that I work on but also protect. And these two pieces, one was on Yupo and another on big photographic paper that I faced them, must have faced them face to face. And then about a year ago, I recovered them and pulled them apart. They were all stuck together and they imprinted on one another. And I thought it was really like a gift, like what happened to them. A folding of the paper, the Hanji paper, I'm folding it more formally. I'm doing that right now in my studio, just folding and playing and painting, where the other one side, the darker one, is more organic and more crunched up and more ripped and mended back together again. This is on Yupo paper. This is I took one of my classes, I think we went to the Cultural Center. It was very foggy in Chicago, and we were walking near the Bean, and oh my God, it was so beautiful. This is a painting on panel with enamel paint. These two I made in Krems in the Residency. I took a lot of paper with me, and then I re-met one of my grad students I worked with in the past who lives in Vienna now with her husband, both painters. And she took me to a great art store in Vienna, and I found something like Yupo paper there, and the one closest to me is made of graphite powder and acrylic paint. The other is on arches and just folded and mixed media. And then these two, I missed my Hanji paper. I didn't have any in Krems, so I started playing around with paper towel. And I kind of liked what was happening with the paper towel. I made a lot of work in Krems, but just showing you a couple. And then this one is actually hanging in my studio now. It was started and stopped, buried under those layers of tarpaulins. It's on a tarp, and I've kind of collaged big pieces of canvas on it. I think originally I was doing that to protect a moment that I liked, but it all kind of got together. And so I really liked the way it came out, from the almost untouched material to something that could be very weighted. So it has different levels if you see it in person. And then there's this painting that's maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. And again, I started it in the front, in the back. I was working on it. I put it away. I buried it underneath these tarpaulins that I'm working with. And when I'm working on a new piece, let's say on top of all this, it's sort of a layer cake, I'm working with a lot of water that's mixed with paint, pouring and doing all kinds of things. And I feel that this painting, through that process of what was working on top, seeped through to the bottom to this painting and created these beautiful rusted moments in it. And I saw that and I stopped. And so it's like an archaeological dig in some point, finding these things that I'm making, and then through time is doing something. My acts of painting are doing something. And together they're coalescing to make something work. I'm very thrilled to say that this painting now is in the collection at the Art Institute of Chicago. And it was amazing. Thank you. But thanks. Wait, I'm not finished. But I was thinking, thank you all very much. I was thinking about my time as an MFA student at the School of the Art Institute, and then the years I've been teaching at the Art Institute. That's been a total joy and experience. That this painting ends up in the collection of the museum is just a lovely thing to have happened. And then I'm going to end with this. This is the last image. This is a photographer's coming through to document the Dora Maar house and studio, and they knock on my studio, "Can we take a picture?" And I said, "Okay." And they did a time-lapse picture. So this is me in the studio, and I covered there's a stone floor from the Middle Ages. I'm covering it with plastic, and it's quite beautiful. But it made me think of the studio, the way I started the lecture, of looking at the studio and being in the studio from the Dora Maar house, the studio in Krems, my Garfield Park studio, the studio on Milwaukee Avenue with Frank, all the studios, and making my work in there is like my favorite place to be, and that is such a gift. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Judith. That was such an incredibly generous lecture. We have a time for a few questions from the audience. If anybody has one, just raise your hand and we'll get to you.
Questions?
I can just project. Okay. There's so much physicality in your art making process with the ripping and the pulling and the.
I'm busy.
Up the stairs. I was wondering, where did that physicality come from? Were you like a dancer as a child? Were you an
No.
athlete?
You know, it's interesting you asked that. I was going to start the lecture. I edited so many things away, but I went to Ohio State. I'm just wondering about it, but there's a physicality. There is a kind of lot of gesture. So when I was at Ohio State, I was an art education student, and I took a drawing class, and this drawing class was called, part of the drawing class, they took you to a flash lab. It was invented by Hoyt Sherman, a teacher of Roy Lichtenstein. So Roy Lichtenstein was at Ohio State 20 years earlier than me. But anyway, I'm in the flash lab, and what we did, we marched in, all the students, kids. I must have been a sophomore in college. In front of me was a big newsprint with a big piece of charcoal, and flashed in a dark room was, let's say, the picture of Leonardo's Mona Lisa, and then taken away. And they wanted us to draw like that. And then the next picture comes up, and it's dark, and we're drawing like that. And so this drawing and acting, reacting, I think that is part of, I think I'm putting together that made a big impression, and that's how I work in my studio. I'm kind of working fast, not all the time, but there is this sort of act and react. So maybe that's it. I don't know if that answers your question, but I was thinking about the flash lab. It made an impression.
There's a really serious architectural impulse in a lot of your work, and I'm wondering if you could maybe talk, or if there's any relevance, I think, between the relationship between ruins and ornament in your work. They're typically negative to one another, but I think in your work, they kind of blend seamlessly into one another. And do you think about that at all in how you're scaling?
I'll answer the first part, the architectural idea. I came at Ohio State, you went into class and you just did what you did. And no one talked about architecture, the grid, nothing. So a little bit about setting up a structure, and I try to teach what I talk about, is the scaffold that, like even looking at de Kooning, his liquid scaffolds, that architecture, those elements. And I think the pattern and some of those things help me construct a space on that picture plane. So the architecture and the kind of composing has been there, even though the material sometimes has a fluidity to it. I'm trying, it is like a cat, you can't control it. But are these breaks where you can have something bounce up against it and give it a kind of structure and tension. Now the ornamentation, I'm not so sure I understand that part of your question, or what you said about that.
I mean, I think it comes down to the repeated use of forms, like the harlequin patterns, even the paper towels, like it's such a banal functional object, but they always have arabesques kind of perforated into them.
Yes,
They're like,
I do love that.
Yeah.
I guess I am attracted to that. And I was thinking of Watteau when you said the harlequin and the patterns. And I'm looking a lot from not just the current, but past. And I think maybe all of that, I was just thinking about how gorgeous it is to go into the Frick and go into that dining room and look at those Fragonards, and then coming out of there. So all of it I can't put a name, a specific thing, but I think collectively through time and my looking has definitely inspired art history. Art history has had a great impact on me. I mean, and I love looking at that stuff. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I tried.
Hi. Right here. I really like the kind of push and pull. Right here. Hi. I like the push and pull in your work of resisting what would be stereotyped as visually feminine or visually masculine. Also, given the history of when you were growing as an artist, and also the female artists that you named that were influencing you at the time. And just would you say that parts of your practice, kind of the hunting and gathering or kind of the gathering part of the detritus, is kind of an interesting combination of would be kind of like stereotyped as female practice, but then you have this very structured
I don't know about that.
Masculine scaffolding.
I think coming up and working, I was very aware of sort of, or even reading at the time Jung and thinking about archetypes, the male and female parts of ourselves, and that I wanted both. I didn't want it just to be feminine. I didn't want it all to be masculine. I wanted some hybrid of that. So I think the architecture, the soft and the hard, the other things that are going on the surface could evoke different kinds of qualities, and if they made you feel something, that materials could speak and say how they feel through the work, that would be the best. But I think I was aware early of maybe the really tough road for a woman, and I wanted both. And I remember one of those paintings at Artemisia was I split the painting down. It was almost like from one of the mausoleums. It was a triangle mausoleum, and I split that one down the middle. One side was the boy, and one side was the girl. The girl was organic in that gesture, and the other was more constructed. They didn't look that different. But for me, I was trying to sort of prove a point of trying to deal with both of those ideas and what that meant at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Judy, again. This was such a fantastic lecture.